So vision. Vision and intention. The text that went out was about being intentional. And this is really a powerful principle, the principle of intention. That I decide where it is I'm going, what it is that I'm going to do, and that is my intention. And to keep that intention in the forefront of our minds is really prerequisite to accomplishing whatever it is in a timely and effective manner. But there's something else that happens when we establish the intention, when we own it, when we affirm it, when we say, yes, this is what I will do. And these powerful intentions lead us to our potential, or at least towards it. We may never actually realize our full potential. It's okay though. It's all right. I mean, how many people were told, like from teachers in school, you're not reaching your potential. And many times the reason that this was happening is because we really weren't trying. But the fact of the matter is, when we have the intention of doing it and put focus on it, then we actually are moving in that direction, and all those potentialities open up for us. Well, but the question is then, I understand that intentions are powerful and they can lead me to accomplishing the goals that I have in my life, but what should I intend? What should I put my attention on? Which intentions should I choose for myself? And the ego, the small part of us, the part of us that always is worried about lack, always worried about losing something or not getting whatever it might be that we want, it has some ideas about what our intentions should be, and it keeps suggesting them over and over again. The problem with these intentions are that they generally are for very temporary kind of things, and they're, as the definition of instant gratification, and they don't take into consideration the fact that we're all connected. Because the ego has its origins in self-centeredness. It has its origins in what those of us in recovery would say is the core of our addiction. Self-centeredness, the sense of separation. And really our only problem. Our only problem. And all other problems that we think we have stem from that problem. So the ego offers its suggestions, only it doesn't put them in terms of their suggestions. It was very strong, and it gives us emotional reasons based in fear to move towards those intentions. And of course, the biggest issue is that will never lead us to God's will. It will never lead us to God's will. And since God's will, we've already defined God's will as being what's best for us and what's best for everyone else, that means that the ego's intentions are always going to lead us to our own suffering and to contributing to the suffering of others. No matter what it seems like at the beginning, that's where it goes. That's where it's always going to go, because, again, it's based in self, small self. It's based in aloneness, isolation. It grows out of that sense of being under threat, alone in a dangerous world. So the way that we find out what we really should be doing, and when I say should be doing, I'm not saying it in terms of a burden, some kind of a responsibility that is too difficult, or what I'm talking about is the ability to live a happy and fulfilled life, because this is what God's will is. God's will is not that we struggle through life for some future reward. God's will is for us to be happy right now. And not just that, but and because it's all tied together, God's will is for us to be happy and be contributing to the happiness of others. Now, we can't actually make someone else happy. Many of us have tried to do this in the past. We have an unrealistic idea about what relationships are about. What we're looking for, many times, because the ego is prompting us, is we're looking for other people to make us happy, and then in turn, we may do something to make them happy. And if we're really in love, then we have a vision of, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to make them happy, they're going to make me happy, and it's going to be a marvelous thing. And then it turns out that that doesn't work, because the bottom line is we have to be happy with ourselves, and then we can share that with others. But no one else, no other situation, no set of circumstances are going to make us happy. We make ourselves happy. We make ourselves happy, and how we do that is we figure out what God's will is for, actually figure out, I shouldn't say figure out. We discover what God's will is for us. And then we decide, we have the intention of moving towards that. And how we find out what God's will is for us, it's like the most simple. It seems to be very complicated sometimes when we first start thinking about it, is how do I know? How can I figure this out? Well, just shut up. Sit down. Be quiet. Open your mind. Open your heart. So this is the beginning of it. And this really it brings me to the 11th thing that I say to myself every day, as I say, through the power of divine vision, I see my mission and purpose and am energized to carry it out. So, sitting down, being quiet, opening ourselves to the voice of God, which Elijah found out was not in the fire, not in the earthquake, not in the storm, but rather in the still small voice within. That God will speak to each and every one of us if we just get quiet enough to hear. Because we need quiet, because the ego is speaking very loudly. The ego is, and not just speaking loudly, but speaking continuously. And we've talked about this before. We call this the monkey mind, that never stops spinning, that's always got these thoughts going round and round. And that's really the important point about it, is the thoughts are going round and round. They're loops, they're closed loops. They keep us spinning, and we think we're thinking new thoughts, different thoughts, but we're actually thinking the same kind of thoughts over and over, and one leads to another in the same pattern over and over again. But getting quiet, entering into meditation, breaks that cycle. We're able to put those thoughts aside for long enough to get an idea about what it is that we're supposed to do. And this is, in quietness, in meditation, there's a couple of things that happen. First thing is we get an overall sense of well-being. This is just a natural thing that occurs. When we're able to get quiet, we just feel better. And we'll feel better afterwards for some period of time. Just that general sense of well-being comes upon us. And the confusion is lifted from us. It's not necessarily that when we get quiet that the voice of God is going to speak to us in a way that we like understand sentences and you know, like we're getting this direct kind of instruction about what we're supposed to do. But what happens is the voice of God speaking softly in us speaks of love. That's all. The voice of God speaking in us quietly tells us that we are love and that we have come from love and that our mission and purpose is to love. And this comes not in the way that I just said it, it comes in the feeling and the sense of connection, which really is half of love. We feel connected because in the quiet we don't feel at odds. We don't feel conflicted. We don't feel like we are in danger. All that is put aside. All those thoughts have been stopped, and so this sense of connection comes over us. And then the second half happens when anytime we consider someone else in the quietness, is that we see that really we only desire good to come to them. And this is the picture of God's will. This is the perfect picture of goodwill, that we feel connected to each other and to all life and desire only good to come to all life. So when we start to develop this, and so we get quiet and these ideas, feelings, senses come to us, that we are part of this whole system of life, we just naturally then start to gravitate towards actions that line up with those feelings. Now we stray from it every day. There's no doubt about it. But once we establish that idea in mind, that we really are connected, that we are all in this together, and that our part is to extend this goodwill to others, then everything starts to get easier. Now, so the generality is this. I can tell you what God's will is for you in a general way, because I know what God's will is for all of us in a general way. And that is to give love and give service. This is what we are all supposed to do. And I don't have any problem with that, right? But the specifics of it, I can't tell you. So I could give this general statement that God's will is for you to love life. All of life. And so, meaning the life in us and the life that we see and sense all around us. So, this is what Jesus said about it, was when the Pharisees, and actually trying to trip him up, ask him about the law, because they believe that what he's trying to do is to get rid of all of those hundreds of laws. He says, there is only two. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul. And the second is like unto it. Love thy brother, love thy neighbor as thyself. So when he says this, what he is pointing out, and when he says, extend love to God with everything that you have. And if we think about God as being all of creation, all the creation that we can sense and that we can see and that we can imagine, and then understand that God is even more than that, that then what we're saying is that to love God means to love all of life, all of creation. And then he says, the second is like unto it, meaning like unto it, it's clear as could be. It's the same thing, only I'm showing you a different application. It's the same thing as the first one, but I'm showing you a different application. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So extend that same love then that you feel for God to your neighbor, but also to yourself. So now, then he says this most amazing thing which just befuddles the Pharisees. He says, and on these two hang all the law and the prophets. So what he's saying then is the Torah is the law, and the prophets are all those next books that are all named for the prophets. So he's saying that everything that is said in all of the, which is the Hebrew Bible, the whole thing, that's the whole Hebrew, which we have called the Old Testament, he says all of the stuff in there is trying to tell you to do these two things. So, and this is, and it lines right up with this idea that we're talking about this morning about God's will. That God's will is for us just to experience that love. And if you think about it, and just if you could just, if in our quietness we can just begin to get a sense of what that's like, to be able to be in the midst of that love in whatever interaction that we're doing. So this is God's will then for all of us. And the Course in Miracles says that we are here to be truly helpful. So here's this question that these two basic philosophical questions that have been coming up over the ages are, who am I? And why am I here? This is the crux of all of it. So who am I? Well, you are a child of God. Now you can say all kinds of other, you can put all kinds of other labels on yourself. But who you are really is you, and when I say child of God, I mean creation of God. I mean son of God, daughter of God. That this is your true identity, right? The loving part of you, the greater part of you. So that's who you are. And then, why am I here? And this is the conundrum. This is what we're actually talking about. What am I supposed to do? Well, the Course says about this, he says, I am here to be truly helpful. I am here to do the will of Him who sent me. I don't have to worry about what to do or what to say, because He who sent me will direct me. And this is the secret, and this is just the bottom line to the whole thing. Is the answer is, and just as, and this is, and Jesus said about this, He says, you don't observe the birds of the air, the flowers of the field. They neither spin nor toil, and yet their heavenly Father cares for them. But they actually do. They don't just, the birds of the air don't just sit in their nests. They do what they're designed to do. The flowers in the field do what they're designed to do. And so each and every one of us, and this is the specifics that we all have to come to, each and every one of us has temporary talents and abilities. That in this life, we have a certain set of things that we are good at, or that we have some kind of potential to be good at, some kind of aptitude for. And so to figure out specifically what we do, it's just an inventory. We say, okay, what do I like to do? This is kind of important. We need to understand what it is we like to do. What do we like to do? What am I good at? What have I been good at? So we write this down. I like to do that. And don't worry. Don't worry if it's something that you think doesn't have anything to do with, what you're supposed to do for God's will. Just write down what you like to do. Well, I like to sit on the couch and watch television. Examine that liking and see what's really going on, right? And there are all sorts of reasons to sit and watch television and enjoy it. Sometimes, you know what, you just need a break, that's fine. But there are other things that you like to do that are actually involve getting up and moving and acting in the world. So what do I like to do? What am I good at? What are my past accomplishments? What things have I... And this is one of the things we want to deny, that we have any accomplishments. But think back. You've done something, and then what have people complimented me on? Now it's interesting that when we are totally involved in self-centeredness, we don't do so many things that people can compliment us on. But we are always looking for compliments. But we pay attention to these things, we write them down, and they'll give us a pattern. They will show us a direction to go in. So, but we don't have to really worry too much about it, because as Jesus says in the Bible, and as the Course says, you don't have to worry about it. That He who sent you will direct you. Well, and He who sent you, this is very important, He who sent you is within you. The voice is within you is what I'm getting at. And so the only way to hear it, though, is to get quiet. To be quiet enough. And so this is why, as we do the practice, when we get up, if that's how we do it, when we get up to actually intentionally quiet the mind, we set the stage. It gives us the ability to get quiet in a second when we're out acting in the world. When we are out interacting in the world. So that when I'm worried, and so here's the bottom line is, the people that come into our vision during the day, the people that come in front of us, those who show up, those are the people that we're supposed to be serving. That's why they showed up. That's why they're there. I mean, so you want to know why you are here. You are here to give service to those who show up in front of you. But this is what's really interesting. They are there to receive your service, but also to give you service. And this happens in a way where we blend together. So every person, even though they are uncooperative, which they are many times,